everyone, and welcome to the Racing Mentor Sponsorship Podcast. I'm here with Toby.
Hey Jess, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm excited because today is the day of the first Racing Mentor webinar when we're going to be talking about relationship building. So I'm quite excited about that. I've got lots of cool kind of messages and emails to share with people who are on that webinar. For anyone that's kind of listening to this late or hasn't managed to get a ticket, there is a second webinar coming up next week that's all about the anatomy of a pitch email, where I'm going to be looking at some real life pitches that have done well and that have actually secured sponsorship, and we're going to dissect them and go through them and really showcase like what works and why it works, so people can create their own emails rather than relying on templates or guesswork. So I'm just really buzzed by all that. I just love stuff like this.
Yeah, it's super exciting, Jess. I think the next webinar is going to be fantastic because, like you say, not writing emails off the back of just standard templates can get a bit samey, and putting your personality behind it and understanding how to create a really good pitched email or message be really fantastic. So I'm looking forward to joining that webinar, Jess.
Awesome. Yeah. So today we are going to be talking about growing your audience as a racing driver. And I think this is really important because it's often overlooked. People just jump straight into pitching for sponsorship without a great deal to offer. And I know that you've been doing tons on your brand, and you've been doing loads on social media, and you've managed to grow your audience since you kind of started in motorsport, Toby. But can you kind of explain why you knew it was important to do that?
Yeah, I mean, growing your audience is obviously really, really key. When I first started out as a racing driver, my audience was zero. So I didn't have much to offer in terms of an engaged audience that I can kind of explain to sponsors about how that audience will work for them. So the importance of building an audience that are engaged and also large in size, if you can get to that point, it's awesome. But I think the really important part of growing your audience is so that when you speak with sponsors, if you can explain that you've got a really engaged audience and that are really behind you and dig for you, then it allows them to kind of showcase their products or services and creates more brand awareness with a really engaged audience.
Yeah, and I think so many people get hung up on follower numbers that they forget to kind of think about that engagement level. Like, I know that when I've taught this, people are like, how can I grow my audience? How can I grow my audience? I'm like, you can grow your audience really quickly by buying followers, but that's never going to impress a business when you've got 10,000 followers somewhere and you're getting 20 likes on a picture on Instagram, for example. So it's about growing your audience while also growing your engagement with that group of people at the same time. I think that's kind of missed a lot with racing drivers.
Yeah, I agree, because when I first kind of started out, obviously I had, zero audience, literally a few friends and family kind of followed my page, and that was pretty much it. And I did kind of look at, drivers that are kind of a little bit more successful or a few years ahead of me and look at these large audiences. And it was a bit daunting to think, well, how can I separate myself from them to me when, I'm such a small fish in this big pond? And you're absolutely right, Jess, because numbers is nothing if you haven't got engagement. And it's really, really easy to spend X amount of money to almost buy an audience. And I've seen people do this, but they're all usually fake accounts, or they're not engaged, or they're not behind that driver. Whereas if you create it, in my opinion, I like to create something organically, because I feel that people then become part of my story. They're really engaged with what I'm up to in my journey, and it ties them with your kind of brand awareness and your brand as a racing driver. That if you then got people behind you for genuine reasons, it puts you in a really good position when you talk to the sponsors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually have a good example of why buying followers doesn't work. So like many years ago, I employed a social media agency to handle my Jetla Bomb Instagram account. And it grew so quickly and I was so pleased. Turns out they just bought a ton of followers for me, which was great. I had like almost 10,000 followers. So it looked pretty good. But when you looked at the engagement, my photos were getting, maybe 50 to 100 likes, which it should be way more for that many followers. And over the years, even though I've been posting consistently, the followers have dropped to just over 5,000, and they're still going down. I'm getting new followers, but I'm losing even more.
That's quite a
So
drop, isn't it?
exactly. So like, even if you do buy followers, it's going to look impressive, like to begin with, but then soon all those fake accounts, they'll be banned. If they're real people, they'll just realize that it's not relevant and they'll unfollow you. So it actually doesn't work out. And still, like that Jet Le Bon personal account, even when I'm posting like really, really great photography and, car stuff, my photos don't get half as many likes as Racing Mentor does, that's got just shy of 2,000 followers. So it's definitely more about that engagement. And I think most savvy businesses will understand that engagement is more important than large follow accounts.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've just recently read a post actually about nano influencers, and that's becoming kind of more of a thing, because those with huge audience that aren't engaged, is that really valuable to a company? And I think this is really nice and inspiring for drivers that are developing themselves and growing their business, because as a, in brackets, nano influencer, I don't really like the term influencer, but small followings that are really engaged actually can be really, really beneficial for companies.
Yeah, because you're going to get way more sales for a sponsor with a highly engaged audience of 1,000 people than you would for a zero engagement audience of 100,000.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think it's important that the racing drivers learn to communicate that. So do your research on what it means to get engagement. Look at your statistics in detail, like how many people are you reaching, who's following, how many comments are you getting compared to other accounts, and kind of really be ready to showcase why it's good what you're doing compared to an account with lots more followers.
Yeah, and I've actually got like a spreadsheet that I've created probably about 3 or 4 months ago now, where I kind of track that information, because I'm a bit of a kind of stats guy. I like to look at what's going on, and it's really interesting to see sometimes that I might actually post less in a week. There might only be maybe 2 or 3 posts that are really, really key, but my engagement rate is so high just off the back of those 2 or 3 posts. So it's really nice to think that my audience, if I don't post so regular, that I still can get engagement when I do post. Whereas I think when you focus on the follower numbers and the likes, I feel that you kind of lose that element of trust, maybe with your engagement with your audience. I think that it's really important to actually bond with your network and kind of grow good relationships with each of your audience. And I chat to quite a lot of my followers, which is awesome because I love speaking to people. And I think that's the really important part of then how you grow your audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the growing your audience and therefore creating a more engaged audience is all about creating the right kind of content. So for example, if you want an engaged audience, then you need to ask questions, or you need to give them something to choose between. I know you're really good at this, Toby, especially on like your Instagram stories using polls and things like that. I think that is what creates engagement, because if someone's clicking something or DMing you or sending over a question on an Instagram story, then that they've got this like added level of engagement and connection with you. So that means they're more likely to engage and connect with you further in the future, like if you have something to sell via a sponsor.
Yeah, and it's really good fun because I think sometimes when you post on social media, it can be very much a vanity game. It's, oh, look what I'm up to, look at me, look at this, and I think that sometimes flipping it around and trying to do something that's good for your audience and something that they'll enjoy and bring them, build them into it and make them involved is really good fun. And like I said, Jess, I really love my Instagram stories because I often like make a cup of tea or something really simple and go, who do you guys love tea, or how strong do you like your tea, for example, or just kind of involving them in stuff, and then my audience then naturally grows off the back of that. And then when I do post something that is an announcement, maybe a sponsorship announcement or something that we're up to, because those guys have been kind of part of my story, they then see my post, and then naturally that gets a really good engagement rate, which is what I want for my sponsors.
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually been working really hard on my Instagram lately, so I feel like that's like my area of expertise at the moment. But I've been doing I have a weekly newsletter that's all about being an entrepreneur and business and stuff, called Jess of All Trades, and in it I've been doing these social experiments. So every week I kind of talk about the different things that I've tried, mostly on Instagram but a bit of LinkedIn as well, in terms of the way that I'm posting stories, or using graphics within my grid, how I'm using my captions, whether emojis are working, all of that kind of stuff, because I think it's really important that we're all experimenting with what works for our audiences.
Yeah, definitely. And you've completely smashed it out of the water on Instagram, Jess, because you've really elevated. It kind of go full circle with the kind of brand awareness. You know, you've got an amazing brand that you're really, really sort of honed in on over the last 2-3 months, and your audience is growing lovely off the back of that. And I actually look at your Instagram now with a bit of envy, Jess, because it's so neat and so posh, and you know you're so consistent with it. And I think that's really important as well when you're looking to grow your audience. Is that essentially your social media is like your shop window. People will turn up there that is a new follower potentially, and if they like what they see, and straight away they get this kind of strong message that this is what this person does, this is how they do it, and are the audience engaged, they're then more likely to follow you. And you can see just from your results, Jess, organically you've really grown lately.
Yeah, so for anyone that's interested, so I started really focusing on my Instagram maybe middle end of May, and I've picked up 300 followers in that time. Obviously, I have a really, really, really specific niche of racing drivers who are looking for sponsorship. So anyone that's actually targeting motorsport fans or, you know, maybe businesses within your niche, you could probably grow even quicker. The things that I've done are making my feed look pretty, which sounds really redundant, but actually it's made such a difference, because when people come to my profile, they're like, this looks nice, I'll follow. Using stories to like engage with people, so getting people to ask me questions, using polls, just getting those little clicks and things. Telling stories in my captions, so saying, you know, I think I posted something about, you know, prove the haters wrong or something like that. And I told this long story about how my business studies teacher said I would never be successful in business, and
I
how
love
now
that post.
I know, and now I'm really smug, like, haha, I wish I could remember your name and hunt you down. Um, but telling stories like that made everyone kind of go, oh, I have a similar story about a boss, or, you know, someone in motorsport, or a troll on YouTube who said the same thing, and here is how I'm proving them wrong. So telling stories like that has really helped, but then also being really obvious with what I want people to do next. So like if I want them to comment, then I will say, please leave a comment, not tell me what you think. Tell me what you think in a comment, because it kind of, it moves people to action. And obviously the more people are commenting, I guess, you know, the Instagram algorithm likes that. It shows the post to more people, which means more likes, more comments, and it kind of snowballs. So there's some quick Instagram tips for this podcast. But one thing that a lot of people ask me is, which social platform should I be on as a racing driver? I don't know if you have any kind of thoughts on this, Toby, because I know that there are some that you like and some that you don't get on so well with.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think it's what's right for you, and the audience that you're trying to follow. My kind of three key areas of what platforms I'm on at the moment. Firstly is Instagram. I absolutely love Instagram from kind of my photography days, and naturally I love pictures, so I feel really at home on Instagram. Um, I'm a massive fan of LinkedIn. A lot of people have found it kind of a boring corporate place, but actually it's turning into more of a friendly, kind of inspiring place to be. And I think for where I'm trying to grow with businesses, it's a really good place and platform for me to kind of share really engaging content. I'm getting some amazing results of LinkedIn at the moment. And lastly, YouTube. I'm really, really new to YouTube, but I've managed to grow my subscribers to almost 100 in 4 weeks, which doesn't seem a lot, but that audience keeps coming back to watch my videos. And I really, really love the platform of YouTube, because I can kind of express a bit more of my personality. I'm not a very good writer. I'm better as a talker, and visually I like kind of like chatting to people. So YouTube really suits me in that respect. The ones I dislike, I'm not a huge fan of Facebook, and I tend to not do too well on Twitter, but that might be just because of the way I am as a writer, versus pictures and imagery. But there, you know, I think it's about preference, Jess. I think when someone looks at what platform they want to build on, I think it's initially start where your skill sets are strong. And I know you've done really well on Twitter, Jess, and your Facebook group's really engaged. So have you got any kind of advice around that?
So I think Twitter's difficult, because I feel like Twitter actually takes more time than a lot of the other platforms, because there's a certain element to Twitter that's sitting down and just chatting with people.
Yeah.
So my Jet Le Bon, my personal account, which is mostly just kind of cars and business and a little bit of fashion, does so much better than Racing Mentor because I'm sitting on it and just going and chatting to people about, what do you think of this, random classic car that's for sale? And I'm going, I want it, even though it's got a weird body kit on it. Wherever everyone else is going, you're crazy. What's wrong with you? That pretty much sums up my Twitter experience from that point of view. Whereas Racing Mentor on Twitter is very much, I just use it to kind of post blog posts and little snippets of information for the audience that is on that platform. But for the most part, I don't get a huge amount of engagement. And then occasionally one post will do just like insanely well. And I cannot work out why.
Yeah,
So
strange.
Twitter's a weird one. I think Facebook is good if you're willing to do things like Facebook lives and get your personality across in that way. Like my Facebook page doesn't do all that well, but like in terms of engagement, but it's one of the biggest drivers for sales for Racing Mentor. So although people aren't engaging with it, but then that's probably my problem for not asking them questions in the same way that I do on Instagram. But the blog posts work really well on there because I think people just mindlessly scroll through Facebook, clicking on articles and reading stuff. So then I think people are like naturally less engaged on Facebook than maybe they once were.
Yeah, I guess so. I must admit, when I'm not a huge user of Facebook, when I do go on there, I am looking at stuff that I could read versus just posts. So I think, actually, it's probably answered my own question in my head, to be fair, is that Facebook seems to be at the moment a place where, people have got a bit more time that they want to actually read something versus just, aimlessly scrolling through stuff.
Yeah, and I don't mean to like just slip into coach mode here, but you might have a lot of success on Facebook with Facebook Lives
Yeah, true. I've never considered it, if I'm honest.
because that's the way that your relationship with your audience works. I think the audience is there. You just got to work out how to engage with them in the right way. But that does kind of bring me on to, my wider point that echoes yours, Toby, is that I think if you're worrying about what social platform to go on, just choose one that you know that you can absolutely nail. Because otherwise you're going to be scrabbling between 3, 4, maybe 5, trying to work out, what content can I post, how can I maximize this, and it just gets stressful and annoying. And I'm in a position now where I have someone to help me out with my social media, which means I always have stuff scheduled, there's always stuff going out, but even still I have to focus on one at a time to really maximize it. So I've kind of done the Instagram thing. I'm now focusing a bit more on LinkedIn, so LinkedIn tips to come. But I think any driver who's worrying about it should just pick one and run with it rather than trying to do everything at once.
Yeah, and I think that's a really, really good message because consistency is king on social media. There's no point posting once and then leaving it 3 months and posting again, posting different sort of style posts. You need to be really consistent so that when your audience are there, they know what to expect. And like I said, Jess, I think it's much better to actually nail one platform that you can really master and then perhaps try another one rather than just be, I hate to say the term, but jack of all trades. I know Jess still trades is actually a cool thing, but a jack of all trades and trying to do lots of different platforms all at once and overwhelm yourself and then not actually post consistently. And it's probably why I've kind of tended a little bit more towards YouTube at the moment because I'm posting really consistently on there and it's getting me good results. And I've kind of relaxed maybe a few others, but I'm trying to master one platform.
Yeah, and I think you eventually find out what works. Like it's the 80-20 rule. Like 20% of your effort will yield 80% of the results. So it's like some of the stuff that maybe I was doing on Instagram a month ago, I won't bother with again because it didn't work. So I'm just refining, like every time I post, like what's the most effective way to reach my audience and what can I kind of scrap. So when I then do move on to focusing on LinkedIn or focusing more on Twitter, I know what's working on Instagram, so it's almost easy. I think there's a big learning process there for anyone who's kind of using social media. But like when you talking about consistency, I think that is the one thing, the one big secret that no one's thinking about in terms of, how can I make my social media more successful? It's consistency. And I know sometimes it's difficult to work out what to post and all of that kind of stuff, but have a plan and make sure you're consistent, and that's how you're going to grow your audience.
Yeah, and this could be a future episode here, Jess, is perhaps looking at individual strategies that you can do month by month I know you did before the hashtag FastFeb, which was fantastic because so many people was really engaged. So many people was posting that really consistently, and every day there was something fresh in my news feed. So for those that didn't see FastFeb, perhaps have a little look back at Jess's feed and sort of gauge an idea of what FastFeb was about, because everyone that kind of was on that, all their audiences grown, their insights were incredible, engagement was amazing. So yeah, putting together a strategy that you can post consistently and spending some time week on week to create that plan of strategy is really, really important to keep that consistency going. And I know it's difficult. I'm not, I advocate it, and sometimes I'm not particularly great at it myself, but I know exactly what I need to do to ensure that.
Yeah, so anyone who does want to look at it, you can still look at hashtag RMFastFeb on Instagram just to see what people were posting. But the whole concept, if you weren't involved, was the 29 days of February, a different topic every day to post about. You didn't have to stick to those topics, you can mix and match, but the point was post every day. And everyone was getting involved, commenting on each other's pictures, liking each other's stuff. But there were so many drivers who did that, who saw huge leaps, not only engagement, but also in followings. So yes, there was kind of, a bit of crossover between the people who were getting involved, but some drivers picked up like 80 new followers in a month from only having, 200 to begin with, which is massive. Plus on top of that, the kind of the reach and stuff. So I think it really taught people how important consistency is. And
Yeah.
you don't necessarily have to post every day to be consistent. You just have to post regularly. So I think with most social platforms, once a day is good. Like I try and do 1 to 3 times a day on Instagram and 1 to 2 times a day on Twitter. And that's a lot of content. But obviously I'm always at racetracks. I'm always doing stuff that's motorsport related, even if I'm at home. But like one of the big things that I changed about the way that I was doing social media is that I started using the graphics that you can now see on my Instagram, because it kind of frees me up to tell a story and give some advice. But I'm, lockdown, I haven't been near a race car in so long, so I haven't been out shooting pictures, and I'm rapidly coming to the end of my like bank of pictures that I've taken at racetracks. So I know it's hard to kind of find the content to be consistent. So if your consistency is 3 times a week, then go with it. You can always up it later if you think it's not working.
Yeah, that's so important. Yeah, so that's the social media kind of stuff done. Something that I've worked towards over the last maybe 6 to 9 months is the email marketing platform. I had this epiphany one morning where I realized that if, for example, Instagram shut down, Facebook decided that it didn't want to operate anymore, and you're so heavily reliant on that platform, what happens to your audience and where do they go and how do they stay up to date? Now, this is very, very unlikely, but I like to have control in everything I do to maximize every opportunity I can get hold of. And one thing I've managed to do over the last sort of, again, 6 to 9 months is create an email list where that's my space. I own my email list. It doesn't go anywhere. It's my contacts. And each month I kind of update my audience on there with relevant news, things that I'm up to, announcements, and all things kind of racing. And month by month, I kind of email everyone that's on my list. I normally get some replies and it creates some cool conversations, but it's a really cool space for me that's kind of private, and it's a unique space that I can kind of tell secret news and kind of keep my audience really like close to me. And I really love it because it allows me to put my personality a little bit more in text form versus the algorithms of social media. Not everyone might see the post. Jess, I know you're really good at your email marketing, and you've got some great campaigns going at the moment with Jess of All Trades, which I love. I love reading that. But I'm sure you'll agree, Jess, that it actually is a really nice way to have engagement with your audience in a kind of private way.
Yeah, I've always had like a newsletter for the racing mentor audiences. But there's this great platform called Substack, which is where I do my Jess of All Trades newsletter and also my Behind the Wheel newsletter. And I've kind of realized that although the 2 Substack ones, they act as a blog as well, so they are kind of public facing if you want them to be. But just having something turn up in someone's inbox that they're excited to read gives you so much more of a connection. But the nice thing about kind of being part of, let's say, a racing driver's newsletter is you get the sense of belonging, which is so important because, you know, you're part of something special. You're getting the inside info, and you're part of someone's journey and part of someone's career. And especially with you, Toby, like, you know, there's a big kind of important cause behind it all, which people want to get behind and support, but also get support from you at the same time, which is why it works so well. So I just think that, like, it's an extra way to kind of engage with that audience and kind of bring that sense of belonging to the people that you're targeting.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really worked for me. Like my email list that I've got, I've created quite a nice relationship with all those people on there. It's quite small. There's about 170 or 180 people on that list, but I have really good conversations with them week on week now. Some to the point where they text me and say, "I've just got your email. Like, I'm so excited about this news," and nobody else knows about this particular news. So it's nice, and I think that kind of, when I started my racing program and becoming a driver, I didn't want it just to be about me being a driver. I wanted to create this community of people having a great time out, and I think being at a racetrack with friends, family, sponsors is such an awesome thing. Like, I love the fact that people come and have a great time, and I get a lot of pleasure in seeing people's faces and smiles and them having a great time. But because obviously I'm not always at a racetrack, you know, we're limited to maybe 8 rounds a year. We can't always get people at the track because of other commitments. Having this kind of community space that I email out, I kind of still get that same enjoyment. And when I hear back from them about something they're excited to hear from something I've been up to, I really enjoy it. It's a really nice place to be.
Yeah, and there's something very personal about email. Like, and even if, you know, it's quite obvious that it's a newsletter, it's gone out to lots of people, the fact that they can reply directly to you is just really nice. And I've got people on the Racing Mentor list who, they don't engage on social media, barely ever speak to them, but they will reply to every single email I send out, just telling me what they've been up to. And I love that. So that's another thing to kind of consider, is that, you know, does your audience even hang out on social media? Is your audience more likely to use email as a way of kind of communication and engagement? Because if that's the case, then maybe that's where you should focus your attention.
Yeah, for sure. Jess, can we talk a little bit about business now? Because we've spoke a lot about sort of fan engagement and building your kind of fan base up and your social media up. And another really important part of sponsorship is obviously building your business contacts, because you've got some great services on offer. And how's anyone going to know about it if you don't build your audience up in the right way to let people know about it? So I want to talk LinkedIn, Jess, because this is a tool that I use a lot. And I know you're on there and you're a really good presence on LinkedIn. But yeah, can we talk a little bit about kind of growing your business audience?
Yeah, so I love LinkedIn, but that's because I think I'd rather speak to, you know, fellow entrepreneurs, you know, on a day-to-day basis and kind of learn from them. But it's also been such a great tool for me business-wise. Like, I think one of my LinkedIn posts, which I actually have shared on my blog and let people like download the subsequent message I sent from it, like, it got me £21,000. Just one message on LinkedIn, and it was just, I got the person at the right time. And had I not been on LinkedIn, I wouldn't have found that person, I wouldn't know about them, and it got me this huge amount of money. So I'm a massive fan of LinkedIn for that reason. And actually, a lot of what I'm going to be teaching in today's webinar will kind of focus on LinkedIn and how to build relationships on there. But I think with anything, it's about providing value and being consistent. So on LinkedIn, people are on there to kind of learn or to grow their business in some way. So if you can be posting about something relevant and entertaining, so race cars, but that also has a good message or a good kind of talking point, that's kind of how you start to build that business audience. Because once someone comments, that will show up in the feed of their friends or their connections as well.
Yeah, and right now, organic reach on LinkedIn is fantastic because it's still kind of almost in its early days of growth. It's not quite as big as the other platforms. So organic reach is really, really good at the moment.
Yeah, it's not like Facebook where the algorithm is like really kind of fine-tuned to only show certain people certain things. And I think that's really important because, you know, once upon a time, Facebook reach was huge, But then they started kind of refining it, which, you know, not a bad thing, but it does kind of lean to more towards like paid ads and stuff now. Whereas, like you say, LinkedIn is much more organic. So the more you're kind of posting and engaging with people, the further that's going to go. You don't have to kind of worry about an algorithm just saying, nope, we're not going to show this to anyone.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the kind of approach I take to LinkedIn is not so much about sales pitches, because I see often on LinkedIn a frustration of people just getting constant pitch emails and, you know, oh, I've just received another pitch, etc. I actually like to use it. LinkedIn as just a platform just to chat business.
Yeah.
I've created some amazing conversations which have led to me getting sponsorship this year, and also just meeting and hearing people's stories. I'm just fascinated by business owners. One of my long-term goals is to own a company. That's been the goal of mine for a long time, and I find it really fascinating understanding business owners and how they've grown into their small little empire of what they've developed. And showing that genuine interest normally leads to conversations where you might then find out of a particular struggle they may have, and you might then find that actually what you offer as a racing driver really aligns with that business. And then it opens a conversation going, hey, look, this is what I do for a living. These are the kind of things I could actually help your business. And because you've built that rapport with that business owner, you've then got a genuine conversation and genuine reason to interact with each other. And on your webinar today, Jess, I'm sure you're going to go through with just how that looks, and I'll leave that to the webinar. But I love LinkedIn for that reason, and I just get so engaged with people on there. It's really good fun.
Yeah, I think LinkedIn's great because firstly, people are open to doing business deals, but they also like don't take any shit. They're not like willing, you know, that if you send a cold pitch from, you know, day one of being connected with someone, you will get blocked. And I do it because it's frustrating. Like social media is supposed to be social, so at least say hello before you pitch to me. But they're also kind of open to doing those deals with people they like. Someone posted a great video and I messaged him and said, wow, what an incredible video. Do you have any more content like this? And he's like, well, no, we don't really have that much time. And I said, that's a real shame because, you know, there's all this great content that you have that you're not getting out there. And he was like, yeah, I wish there was, you know, a way that, you know, someone could do something for me. And he basically just invited me to do his social media for him.
Wow.
Just from the get-go. I mean, it didn't work out. He was a bit kind of smaller than who I would approach for the big things that I'm doing with content strategy at the moment. So it didn't work out, but it's the fact that he just invited me to kind of pitch and to help him out shows that people are just so willing to do deals on LinkedIn. And I think any racing driver who isn't using it or isn't at least kind of dipping their toe in to start kind of building their audience there is going to be missing out in the long run.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And like I say, you know, I'm on there to do business because I know what I offer is great and I know that I can help companies out. And likewise, businesses are on there to promote their companies and their services and products. So it is a really good platform for that. But I think anyone that's listening to this, don't just go straight onto LinkedIn and just go straight for pitching and just, you know, that kind of interaction. Look at building your audience, exactly what this podcast is all about. Build your audience on there. Get a really good kind of established content strategy, and you'll be amazed with the conversations you then have, which could potentially lead on to sponsorship agreements.
Yeah, and if you're kind of listening to this thinking, right, I need to go do LinkedIn, go back and listen to the first podcast on branding and also listen to the one on researching sponsors, because I think they're kind of key in getting your LinkedIn presence right and talking to people in the right way.
Yeah, you've got to find your voice in there because it is a little bit different to the other platforms, and for sure those two listens would be really, really good for that.
So should we talk about our driver, or as it is, drivers of the week?
Yeah, let's go ahead. This one came from you this week, Jess.
Yeah, so I have known these guys for a while and I just really love what they're doing. And they also have a podcast, so I thought it'd be a good kind of chance to plug what they're doing, but also give them a shout out and kind of thank them for what they're doing. So our drivers of the week this week are Nick, Steph and Rob from Club Racing UK. They kind of run, I don't know if you guys have seen it on social media, but they run Club Racing UK, which is a Facebook group and page where they kind of bring together everyone that's in club racing. And it's just a really great platform for people to ask questions about how to get into motorsport. There's loads of chat about the different forms of club racing that's in the UK. Just a really good resource for anyone who's kind of starting out or kind of them making their way through, different disciplines. But they have this podcast which can be found wherever you like to listen to your podcasts, and they're doing it in association with our friends at My Supercar. So it goes out on their Facebook page, and then once the audio is taken from that, it then goes out on all the normal podcast places, so you can find it on Apple and all that kind of stuff. But they're talking about really hard-hitting subjects. Like they did a whole episode on the cost of club motorsport, and they kind of discussed that in detail. And I think those kinds of conversations where everyone's talking openly about this stuff is so important. So I just kind of wanted to give them, a big shout out on this podcast, because they're doing such good things, and I think everyone should go check them out and give them a listen.
Yeah, congratulations, guys. And I'm certainly going to be tuning in. It's news to me today, actually, about Club Racing UK. So I'm really excited to look at their content and see what they're up to.
So that's all we have for you guys today. As always, if you have any questions, you can email me directly, jess@racingmentor.com. And as always, you can go to blog.racingmentor.com to find all of the show notes and links to stuff that we've talked about on today's podcast. So for now, we'll see you next week.
See you next week, guys. Thanks for tuning in.